What keyword ranking strategies are you currently using? The entire goal for ranking is how many orders can we possibly get through that one specific search term. Now, I know there's a lot of talk in our space around like, oh, target like long tail search variations of the keyword and all that stuff. That does help. It's not going to have the most impact. So the most impact for any ranking keyword is going to be getting orders specifically through that search, getting a lot of orders. So we don't just want one, we want a lot. And also making sure that our click-through rate and our conversion rate are really high on those key terms. So I'll be honest with you, the biggest impact on ranking you can have is really by picking the right keywords. So if your question was, how do I figure out what keywords do I rank on? I would say like look for things that you can afford to spend a lot, i.e. you're not losing money, meaning ACoS isn't like so crazy high that you can't afford it. You want to look for things that you have really good conversion rates. Bonus points if you have good click-through rates here, but I would go for conversion rates over click-through rates. And then you just want to like put money towards that. Now, if you say, how do I rank on this specific keyword, then that question is a little bit different. And I'm just going to tell you like push volume. Now, what I recognize is that me saying, hey, push volume through a one specific search might mean that that's not super profitable. So that's where I'm saying like the real trick is going to lie in the actual targets that you select to rank on. Other things, some pro tips and some pro hacks are more advanced but can be helpful here, is if you have a specific search where it's like crazy expensive and you just don't really have the budget for it. Again, that goes back to keyword selection. Make sure you're selecting keywords where you can afford to spend that budget on it. But if we're on a specific keyword, you want to make sure that you're showing high enough in search that you can really get those good conversions and get those eyeballs on the product. But maybe you can't afford a ton of clicks because there's a lot of clicks and they're really expensive. And use the budget as sort of a lever to cap or meter how much money you are spending for that ranking play. Now, how effective that is going to be how many orders your market is making, and that's relative. So when I talk about trying to get a large amount of orders, it's relative to the other competition that is on that particular search page. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Ask Junglr. I guess this is a podcast. It's a live podcast. Welcome. I appreciate you all joining. This is one of my I say this every week, and yeah, but it's one of my favorite times of the week where I get to talk about my favorite thing in the world, which is Amazon advertising. So if you are joining again, I want to say a big welcome. Thanks for coming back. And if this is your first time joining in, the format of this is you basically drop your Amazon ad questions into the chat. I pull them up and we jam out and talk about Amazon advertising strategy. Why do we talk about Amazon advertising strategy? Because that is what I have been focused on for the last, 8 years personally. Think about 6 or 7 years. So we run an Amazon advertising agency called Junglr, hence the Ask Junglr name. Really excited. In the future, we'll probably be having some other team members and things and guests joining in. But again, this is the time and the place to get all the answers to your Amazon advertising questions, because we have a ton of experience across a ton of different categories. So I have been in talks with some, like brands and things, a lot of talk around apparel, supplements, home goods, high price products like electronics and other things. We have a wide variety of experience across like a wide range of categories. And what I've found is that there are Amazon advertising best practices, and then there are nuances to the specific categories. For example, did you know that in the clothing space, a 5% conversion rate is actually like a really good conversion rate versus, say, supplements? If you have a 5% conversion rate, oh my gosh, you're probably leaving, like you're totally losing out, because in the supplements category, like 15 to probably 20% is a really good conversion rate there. So everything is always very relative and very contextual, and that is what our goal is for this segment. So we show up here every single Thursday. Pretty much rain or shine, and give you answers to your Amazon advertising questions. Already seeing some questions in the chat, which is freaking awesome. So I'll pull those up. We'll get answers. Serge is saying, hey, how are you doing? I'm doing really well. I was under the weather at the beginning of this week. Thankfully, I've kicked it back up and kicking. I have had way too much caffeine today, which is fantastic because right after this segment, so we'll probably have to end this maybe a couple minutes early because I'm going to jump right into another Q&A session that I'm doing with some of my good friends, some of them from my Amazon guy, and also Mina Elias, which if you're not aware of him and the content he's putting out, so not just be me, but a lot of other Amazon advertising minds coming through to answer other Amazon advertising questions. So a lot of answers to questions today. So I'm super excited for that. If anyone wants a link to that other live, definitely I can get you that as well. But without further ado, I am going to pull up and we're going to start jamming out on your questions. So again, by the way, what I find is that typically with these, like there's always a flurry of questions at the end. And again, we have a little bit more time limitations today. I have a hard stop. Sometimes I go over to answer final questions. Today, I'm not going to be able to do that, unfortunately, which means if you want an answer to your question, if I say anything that triggers another question, if you have a follow-up question, and make sure you get those in sooner rather than later, because what I have found is that a lot of times, like again, the end flurry of questions, and I try and get to everybody I possibly can, but sometimes people get left out. Apologies, but we'll be here back next week. So again, feel free to show up and ask the questions. And without further ado, let's get into the first one. This is a fantastic question. So when launching, should we reduce the bids on our exact match single keyword campaigns? When should we pause them? What is the keyword is really relevant but not converting? This is a great question. And what I'm actually going to do, if you are not aware, we give away our complete like launch strategy. So the answers to that question are actually there. If you go to our website and you go to resources and you go into select product launch strategy, and just input your email. Promise you we don't spam. We put out some really great newsletters. You'll be added to the newsletter, but the main thing is you will get our A to Z launch system. It's like a 32-page document. I give it all away. And when I mean all away, including optimization questions. So let's dive into that as well. And let's go through. So this is the document. I might have to pull off your question, but you're asking about reducing bids. So what you want to do in the beginning when you come to single keyword campaigns, you definitely want to make sure you have a strong starting bid. And there's questions around budgets and things. But basically what you want to do is you want to make sure that you're getting enough impressions to really be able to evaluate things. And then what you're going to do is you're going to see, do those keywords convert? Excuse me. Because if they do not convert, then you're never you're not going to rank on them if you're not driving orders. Again, Amazon's going to happily take your money for the traffic, but you need to make sure that you're sending those positive signals to the algorithm. And so if you are not, so you got to get impressions, you got to get clicks, and then those clicks need to go into orders. So you need to start evaluating the shopper funnel. And then if you are not getting conversion rates, you do want to start reducing the bids. Now, ideally, you have something that does convert. So our goal in the beginning is to determine where do these products convert and where can I drive enough volumes that I'm able to push out on ranking. So if things are not converting, one, you want to make sure you have enough clicks to fully evaluate that. How do you determine that? Well, let me see where it is in this document. So if you are not converting, again, you want to make sure that you have enough clicks. So let's look at that. So you use your conversion rate to determine how many clicks you need on average to generate a sale. Now, you have to at least get one order or have some order to evaluate a conversion rate. Now, that can be an organic order. Most likely it's going to be an ads order. And then you're simply going to take your orders and divide it by your clicks. And that's going to tell you like what your conversion rate is for that product. Once you know what your conversion rate is, you take that conversion rate, you do 1 divided by your conversion rate, and that's going to give you how many clicks on average it takes you to convert an order. And from there, you can say, have I gotten enough clicks on average through this keyword to determine if it converts or if it doesn't. And then from there, let's see, let me give you our exact. So our goal, again, we're not looking for profitability right now. What we're trying to determine is, do they convert or not? So it sounds like in your question, you're like, hey, they're super relevant. Sometimes relevancy doesn't actually convert. So what you can do is you can start reducing the bids by 10 to 20%. To see if a lower CPC will have you convert. But oftentimes what we'll do is we'll pause them, or do what we call like a soft pause, which is setting the bids to 17 cents. So they're still technically active, but we're not going to be aggressively going after them because we've gotten enough clicks to determine. Sometimes in the beginning, like, you need reviews. Maybe you're still figuring out your offer, meaning like your price point. You might be playing with other metrics to help with that conversion rate. And so oftentimes in the beginning, even keywords that you think make sense for the product don't necessarily convert. So what we do in the beginning is like, hey, if it's not converting, let's not keep spending money on it. Let's just double down on the ones that convert, which, to be honest, oftentimes is not the top keywords in our space, unfortunately. And then the other thing is, so I have a bonus troubleshoot. By the way, if you don't have this, or you might be going off of this, but if you don't have this, I would look at this. This is going to be super, super helpful for you when it comes to like totally A to Z for like product launch. But some of the things is like, if you're let's see, problem 2, clicks but no orders, what to check. So check your listings. If you're not getting anything that's converting, look at your listings. A lot of times in the beginning, we think that our listings are optimized, when in all honesty, we don't always get it right out of the gate. In fact, I don't know if we ever really get it 100% correct out of the gate. And so you want to take a look at your listings and infographics, price to value ratio. Again, take a look at where you are versus competitors in your market. If you decide to launch a more premium product, which you can do and get away with sometimes in certain niches, but you also have to make sure that your listing clearly displays the value. Because let's think about it. If you have a product, if you're in launch phase, you have maybe only a couple reviews, and you're priced at the higher end of the market. Like, if there is any other product on the market that a shopper would perceive is just as good, and they have better reviews, so they're more vetted, and they have a lower price point, they're always going to, I'm going to say always, but generally speaking, they're going to purchase the cheaper options. So you want to make sure that your listing, and when I say listing, I mean your images. Your images need to fully portray. I can't tell you how many times I've talked to sellers, and they'll tell me like, oh yeah, like, you know your products really well. So they're like, hey, this is a more thicker version of the, I've used more premium, like there's double stitching, or there should be some reason why you are at the price point that you're at, or charging what you're charging. And it needs to be very apparent to shoppers that you are the premium option. And to do that, you really need to display it in your images. Again, I've talked to a lot of sellers, and when I talk to them about their products, they're like, oh yeah, this is more premium, there's this, there's that. Like, they're listing all of these benefits and features. And when I go there to the listing, I'm like, this is not apparent anywhere in the listing. And I'll ask them, I'll say like, hey, where do you have this? Like, oh, it's in the 4th bullet point. I'm like, I'm sorry, bullet points, like seller or shoppers don't really read bullet points. Like, you know your product, you know your listing, so inherently you just like understand that. A fantastic way to evaluate a listing is to just give it to somebody who doesn't know the product really well and say like, hey, what do you think about this product? What do you understand about this product? And that will be like, you'll get really raw feedback. Don't let it hurt your feelings. Treat it as a learning exercise. But I would say you definitely want to make sure. And then I would just say, if it's not converting, just find targets that are converting and double down on there, because again, there is a reason why they're not purchasing yet. And it could very well be that it's in the beginning stages of the product, and eventually you can go after those keywords, but you may not have a strong enough offer. When I say offer, I mean like images as well as like reviews and everything else. You just might not have a strong enough offer to compete on those key terms yet. And that's honestly quite normal. Jeffrey coming in with a question on supplements. So I'm selling supplements and using an engram for negations. I've been using negative phrase on one-word negations. So you recommend using a negative exact on 2 and 3 word negations. It depends. If you're using engram, then most likely you're trying to eliminate all terms that show up under like with that root phrase in it. If that is the goal, you're saying, hey, whenever this phrase shows up, I never want to show on these search pages, then I would continue to use a negative phrase match. That will completely block any long tail variations of that. Now, if you are looking at it and you're like, okay, so when this root word shows up, the 2 and 3 word, I still kind of want to test some of the long tail variations of these search terms, then that's when I would use a negative exact. But most of the times, if you're doing it and you're running the engram analysis, doing negative phrase match can be beneficial. You just want to be careful though, because there are some times where like products mature over time. So originally what didn't convert, maybe you changed your image stack, and that could change, the way shoppers perceive your products. And so you do want to be careful with adding a lot of negative phrase match, because there is a world in which you would want to go and reevaluate. And so that's one of the things that we'll do sometimes is like, hey, going through and like kind of reevaluating negative phrases, because there is a possibility of like getting a little bit too aggressive with those. So I would say keep adding the negative phrase, just a word of caution, make sure you're not restricting yourself too much. Hey, Elizabeth, I'm trying to forecast Q4, but I don't have historic data for the product. I'm thinking a search volume multiplier, click-through rate, conversion rate. Any tips? Yeah, fantastic question. So the one thing that we do, and I'll go through, let me pull up, we use Helium 10, but you can totally use like other keyword research tools. Anything that has a search volume indicator in there, that is something. So if you look at where you're highly ranked on the platform, one of the things, again, I like the click-through rate and conversion rate, but the other thing is the increase in the traffic. And so what you can do, and I'm trying to pull up like Magnet really quick so I can run a search, but you can also look at the search volume trends. So an example, I'm going to do gift for mom, which is probably not a fantastic keyword to go after. If you're looking at, kind of rankings, obviously you want to look at your specific keywords, because there are some categories where you just get like a ton of volume during Q4. And then there's other categories that actually search volume or like shopper behavior like decreases during Q4. It's highly dependent. So an example would be sometimes like a lot of outdoor products, because it's colder and they're not necessarily giftable, like yard signs and things for the most part we've seen go down. I'm trying to think what else, but there's a lot of like items that aren't necessarily a necessity. They kind of fall on those like random purchases, and oftentimes because everyone's spending like their cash on or they're spending their excess income on presents and gifts, like things decrease. So you definitely want to be aware of it. So if you go into here, and here I'm looking at like back pain and things. But if you look at search volume, you can click like these little options and you can actually look at the search volume trend. So if I look at all time, you can definitely see like there's a ginormous spike, and it kind of actually has decreased. But you know, here we have around Mother's Day as well as Q4, like there's definite spikes here. So you can kind of look at those increases. Now, the thing that you would want to pay attention to is like, am I highly ranked? So here it's like Gift for Mom, we probably aren't ranked high on it, but I would want to look at the specific search terms that you are ranked on. And then you can also gauge how much increase or if there is even seasonality. Like search volume trends are a fantastic way to gauge seasonality for products that you don't have historic performance to fall back on. So I would look at those things as well. Do you pay any attention to search term impression share when trying to rank? Is there a sweet spot for impression share where you can expect to rank to start picking off more than 20 to 30%? Yeah, so that is a great question again. So yes, we do pay attention to it. We look at it periodically. The thing that I like, so there's two numbers. There's also the search term impression share, but there's the search term impression rank, which is insanely helpful. So the search term impression share says like, what percentage of the total available impressions am I gaining? But then the search term impression rank tells you where do I rank in terms of other competitors on this one search term. So you want to look at those two things in tandem, because there are certain terms where you might have, say, like 50% of the impression share, and you're like, oh my gosh, like I'm only getting 50% of the impression share. But what if you are impression rank 1? That means out of everybody, you're actually 50% is gaining the majority of the impressions for that search term. So while we can push up our bids and get more aggressive, we're already kind of at the top of the leaderboard versus, you know, other search terms where you might have like 20% impression share, but you look at the impression rank and you're like, oh, wow, I'm like 15. So there's a lot of room for me to overtake the competitors and get more aggressive. So I would want to look at three things when evaluating these things. I would want to look at search term impression share. Is there ability to get more? Because you're never going to have 100% on anything. And then I would evaluate that versus the search term impression rank and understand if I'm rank 1, yes, there's probably a probability that I can generate more impressions, but I'm already kind of like outpacing everybody else in the market. And then the third thing you obviously want to look at is the profitability. So can I afford to push more on these key terms and get more of those impressions? But all of those things, yes, they will be helpful to understand like where you can push more on. Recently, I'm seeing a new campaign settings for ads served off Amazon. Oh, I'm getting this question a lot. I really like it. I want to go through like the history of this because it's a really interesting one. Can we use this feature to our advantage? Is there another trick to make Amazon dollars? Yeah, so originally, so the history of this off Amazon placements is Amazon had an alert inside of Ad Console. Gosh, it's like a while back, where it said, hey, by the way, you are going to, sponsor products are now going to be serving up advertising placements off of Amazon. Oh yeah, there's no way to track it and there's no way to turn it off. And all of us advertisers are like, fantastic, Amazon, thank you so much for giving me something that I have absolutely zero control over and I worry is going to hurt my performance. And so we all kind of like, well, that sucks. And we braced ourselves for the poor performance, and all of us kind of noted that there wasn't really a massive impact to performance in sponsored product ads. So then eventually what came out was the if you look at a sponsored product placements report, you will find the data for the performance of your individual campaigns off of Amazon. And so then we had the ability to look at the performance. And to be honest, a lot of times the performance just wasn't all that fantastic, but there wasn't any way to turn it off. And then now what they've added is a little checkbox so you can uncheck, say, hey, I don't want to serve my sponsored product ads off platform. I don't want to show up there. So now we have the ability to do something about it, which is fantastic. So now we have the report and we have something, the ability to do something. And what I have seen is I've seen a lot of screenshots of people saying like, hey, now we can turn off, like go and turn off all off Amazon placements, they don't work, and or like a very hard line. I'm an advocate of whenever Amazon gives us the data to make a determination, use your data. So what I would do is I would recommend downloading a sponsored products placement report, and then I would go through the individual campaigns and I would identify where I'm getting poor performance off Amazon, and then just either elect to uncheck it. Now, what else I will say is that in my experience, unless this has changed, and I think last time we evaluated it was rather recently, and so it really hasn't changed, there's not a lot of ad spend on off platform placement. So if you're looking to maximize reach, I would say you can just keep them on. However, if you do the evaluation, you're saying, hey, there's a decent chunk of my ad spend going to these off placements, and then it's not performing, then in that case, I would go and I would uncheck the box. But again, we have the data to evaluate it. So I would always be an advocate for checking the data. So hopefully, I'm assuming everybody can see and hear me just fine. But if you can, I want to make sure that my audio is. And just as I said that, my mic went off. So hopefully you guys can hear me. Let me know, because notification just popped up that my mic is not working. So hopefully it's working. Feel free to drop in the comments if you can hear me. But let's keep it rolling. Question is, in supplements, new launch, for how long should you bear 100% ACoS if the conversion rate is good, 15%, but the CPC cost is just making ACoS so high? All right, cool. I'm seeing messages that mic is working. Fantastic. Okay, cool. This is a fantastic question. And I actually pulled up, we have this thing called Amazon growth equation that we use, which can be very helpful. And we also have an ACoS forecasting model inside of here that I think would be quite helpful. So the thing that you find in supplements, because we run supplements all the time. So let's say that you said conversion rate's good. It's like 15%, but your cost per clicks in the supplements category are oftentimes crazy high, oftentimes upwards of like $5 or so, which is where you're seeing a high, the really high ACoS come from of like 100%. Now, we do have some supplement accounts that we're running at like, I think 40% ACoS. Sometimes you can get away with 35. It is highly dependent on, but the one strategic advantage that you have when it comes to supplements, which is what your competitors are recognizing, which is why everybody's willing to pay $5 CPCs or even $8, or sometimes I've seen friggin' bananas like $10 CPCs. It's crazy out there, is the fact that you have a customer lifetime value, or you have repeat purchases. If you mostly, it depends on the new launch if you're eligible for subscribe and save, but as soon as you're eligible for subscribe and save, I would turn that puppy on, because what that's going to do is that's going to hook people into your ecosystem, and that is going to give you a much better LTV for your shoppers. So really what you need to do in these categories is you need to look at the cost of acquisition. Now, to look at the cost of acquisition, to do it correctly, we have some reports that we can make. Also, we can make those available to clients that track like true cost per acquisition and true LTV, because how you really want to track it, if you're being correct, is to actually look at the individual like shoppers, and see like, okay, for each individual shopper, how much are they purchasing? And that is kind of how you forecast that. But if you want the easiest way to forecast it, to see like, hey, am I getting better LTV, is one, look at your subscribe and save rates. But then two, you can also use total ACoS. So in the supplement category, the best way to track for long-term growth is not going to be ACoS targets, because when it comes to ACoS targets, there's really only one main thing that you do. There's kind of two, but the second one just has a way less impact. So you can target keywords. search pages, placements, whatever, that have a better conversion rate. So which means if your average, like say unit session percentage is 15, maybe you can get like a 16% average conversion rate in your ads, which technically would bring down ACoS, but that's not that much. So really the major thing you're doing is lowering your cost per clicks. You can do that through optimization over time, but there's only so much you can optimize bids before you just like lose all impressions, which becomes a major problem. So let's say in this case, I wanted to target an ACoS and have like 125%, and I want to do like, let me not do that. Escape. I wanted to target a 50% ACoS. That means I have to decrease my CPC from $5 to $2, which sometimes is just not competitive. So you can layer in low bidding broad match sometimes works depending on the supplements. You can go after like the highly specific keywords. So like an example would be, okay, so I take creatine. You have the creatine supplements, and then you have, which is like really competitive, but there you have powders, you have gummies, you have pills. So you might target like creatine gummies, and then like creatine gummies for women. You know, like a lot of times those ones will have much better conversion rates. You can get away with maybe not being so high in CPCs because it's not as competitive. So there are some things you can do with ad strategy, but the main thing is going to be making sure that whatever you're doing in ad strategy is leading to better organic sales. And again, those organic sales, a lot of times if they can come from subscribe and save in the supplements category. So even if I had, say, like I have a crazy 100% ACoS, well, if I wanted to target a total ACoS target of, I don't know, 20% in supplements, then I need only 66, if like a 66, nope, that's not correct. If I needed like 60, if I needed most of my, if I can get like 50% of my total sales coming from advertising, let's see, then that's going to put me at like a 50% ACoS. So I need to have even more of my total sales coming from organic, and then you can lower the total ACoS. So that's really the game that you're playing, is like, how do I make sure that I'm balancing how competitive my advertising needs to be with like cost of acquisition. So you need to play the longer game, but it's possible to do that. And then over time, you also like hone in on the targets that you can get lower CPCs for. So how long you have to like stomach 100% ACoS, I would say, would be determined by, can you find targets that you can get lower CPCs on? Can you balance it out with longer tail, broader keywords? And then also I would focus more on total ACoS and making sure that I'm getting repeat purchases, because that's how you play the long game. It is possible to be highly profitable in supplements. You just have to play the long game and focus more on total ACoS. How do you set up a campaign for variations? Fantastic question. I have a couple things. So let me see. I have a whole video on this. Let me pull this up and I'll grab it and I'll put the link in the chat because it looks like you're on YouTube. This is the best variation ad strategy. So for context, we advertise for a lot of clothing brands. So talk about variations. There's like hundreds of variations. By the time you get from like styles, colors, sizes, it's bananas. So basically what you want to do, and I also have that in the product launch system. So let me find, should I go through keyword research? Here we go. Handling product variations, because this is a question that comes up a lot. So if you only have one child ASIN, obviously that's not the case, but then you're just going to put those into a campaign. If you have multiple variations, there's two scenarios. One is where it's a brand new product, where you have like zero idea of which one converts better. In that case, the way we do them is we group them in the ad groups. I don't like to group products if they are on separate listings or parent ASINs, but if they're all child variations, then you can group those. And then what you can do is then you want to go back and evaluate those campaigns and say, okay, which of the variations in these campaigns is performing best and worst. And then once you start to get that data feedback, you're going to start to pause the underperformers. If you already have some performance data, so due to past organic or past advertising you're running, what we like to do is use the highest converting variations. Now, it depends on your stock level. So there are things in like clothing, black mediums, notoriously difficult to keep in stock. They're always running in and out because the ads are attached to the SKU and the ads are retail aware. If that one variation, top selling variation, goes out of stock, all of your ads pods, which is not ideal. So sometimes we'll keep the top 2 to maybe 3, depending on how much of an issue we have in keeping in inventory. And then the other, so that's like for your main keywords and what we call generic keywords, which means that there is nothing in that search to describe a specific product. So example would be like women's button-up shirt. I don't know if they want the medium. I don't know if they want the small. I don't know if they want the blue one, the black one. No idea. So I'm going to put my best foot forward. I'm going to put my top performing variations in that campaign. However, if you have something with variation intent, example here again, blue button-up shirt. Okay, I'm going to only advertise my blue button-ups in that campaign. This is a strategy we developed 3 years ago. We've been implementing it, and you will dramatically increase the conversion rates if you can go through the trouble of matching variations to keyword intent. But again, when there's no like search intent for the keyword, if it's more broader, then you want to just put your best selling variations in those. All right, we got a two-parter. Let me take this down. If you're trying to rank in a keyword that's not profitable, should we bite the bullet and accept it until ranked, or just stay reliant on ads by advertising conservatively? Can advertising conservatively impact ranking over time, or would the rank position just stay since we aren't pushing? That is a great question, and one that does not have a completely black and white answer to. So what you're talking about is, it seems like there's this whole thing about keyword cannibalization, right? If I push on this keyword and then I rank up my product, can I pull back and to get more profitable and not hurt myself? Trying to think, multiple thoughts here. I want to frame this in a way that's helpful. So the keyword rank, ton of different factors that go into it, multiple different factors. If I had to boil it down to one that was important when it comes to advertising, is history of volume of orders through that search, with advertising helps with. So that is why, even if you are saying running at a loss on the advertising, it can be beneficial because you'll push yourself up in ranking. Now, where it becomes difficult, and trust me, I've been down the rabbit hole to try and forecast this out, if at all possible, just there isn't enough data to fully understand the difference in sales from, say, like position 4 to position 2. Like intuitively it's better, but we're not really sure. And so you just kind of have to test it. And so what I would say is that if you can afford to do so, meaning that your total A cost is fine, and you can afford the budget that you have. So here, I'm not looking at A cost of the specific term. I'm looking at total sales over time. I'm looking at ranking for that one search for that product. I'm just looking at like the whole playing field and saying like, okay, are we in fact improving? You know, am I not at a loss in terms of like total A cost? If those things are in line, then I'm saying, okay, I'm good to test. So from there, my testing is going to be there's two different ways that you can start to pull back on things. One of them is controversial, but in my personal opinion, most times the best one when it comes to ranking strategies. So the first one is to start to pull back on the bids. Now, what you'll find is you'll slow down lower in search, which may be fine. You will typically lower the CPCs overall, which can be helpful. Sometimes what you'll find, it depends on the search term or the search page, that you need a higher bid to show up high enough to really generate the orders that you need on that specific search. And in that case, you're kind of have a catch-22 because you're like, I can't really lower the bids because I get no impressions. But if I keep the bids this high, I'm just going to like spend a ton of money and then my total A cost is going to get too high and it's just crazy. So the other thing that you can do is you can cap your budget. So you can say, okay, I can afford to spend this much on this ranking keyword. And so I'm just going to I'm going to put a campaign budget knowing that budgets are going to run out. And that's fine. I want to find the video. I did it was a bit high level because he's really into advertising. But this PPC ranking strategy, I went over the whole budget cap with Adam from BTR Media is what their rebrand is. I'll drop this in the chat. I would highly recommend going through this because he talks about ranking, but then also about how do you afford top of search ads? How do you afford aggressive ads? Highly recommend watching that video because that will I think that will help answer even more in depth. From how many SKUs should you automate? Okay, here's what I'm going to say when it comes to automation. If you are getting good results doing things manually, even doing things manually, you still have a methodology behind what you're doing. So I highly recommend, and I say this because I didn't do this in the beginning and I had to go back and rethink it through. But if you have a methodology that is getting results manually, you want to start documenting your methodologies. So it's like when a cost is this, I do this. I factor in this data point. I look at this, I look at that. You want to thoroughly map out your methodologies, because if you have a methodology and a system, that can be automated. What I don't like doing is jumping to automations when I don't understand the mechanics of the methodology, because two things will happen. One, you will be relying on somebody else's methodology and you won't have enough information to assess whether that methodology is correct or incorrect. And most good or any good automation system will still have inputs, meaning A cost targets or cost per click thresholds or click thresholds, or there's inputs you put into the system when it comes to automation that tell the system how to function. And if you don't understand the mechanics of what drives results in your accounts, you won't, some bidding systems, people are like, oh man, this didn't work. It's no, you put inputs that actually made the system do something that it shouldn't do. So I would say document the methodology that you are using. And as soon as you have a well-documented methodology that you can rely on, when I do these sequences of things, and as long as I'm paying attention to this and I'm not overcorrecting here, as long as I do these things, then that's when I like to bring automation into it. And automation could be still have quite a bit of manual input all the way to a hands-off input. So I would say it's not so many how many SKUs, it's how well do I understand the methodology and the system that gets the results. And as soon as I have that methodology and that system, I'm a huge systems girl. I'm a huge, if I have something that I know if I repeat the sequence, it's valuable and gets results, I want to find the easiest, quickest, most efficient way to do that system that does not sacrifice quality. The minute that you go to automations and you sacrifice quality to get the automations, then you're in hot water. But if you are not going to sacrifice quality to input automations, I don't care if it's 1 SKU, I don't care if it's 20 SKUs, I don't care if it's 100 SKUs, I would still implement it. I don't know if that was helpful, but hopefully it was helpful. Is tacos can be seen on a dashboard? No, unfortunately not. However, let me see if I can find it for you. There is a really amazing tool called Seller Utilities. And I'm going to see if I can drop it. I got to find it. Seller Utilities. It is a plugin that allows you, it's a free plugin that will allow you to display inside of the ad console. Hold on, I wanna, let's see, can I find it? Because if I can find it, this is a fantastic, like no affiliation, just a really good friend. But I really like this plugin. Let's see if I can find it. This is, let me find it. It's in the Chrome store. I'm going to drop the link in the chat, which by the way, if anyone's listening to this and wants the link, feel free to reach out to me. This is a fantastic tool, which will allow you to see your total ACoS inside of ad console. It'll also allow you to see things like sales, session percentage. It basically carries over business reports data into the ad console, which is like chef's kiss fantastic. The only other way to get total ACoS is to use another tool, so like an external tool, or you can calculate it yourself. It's simply your ad spend divided by your total sales. But I highly recommend that plugin. It's fantastic. What would you suggest with hats the most effective strategy for gradually? What you suggest, what are the most effective strategies for gradually shifting sales from Amazon sponsored ads to organic sales while maintaining overall revenue growth? You simply want to make sure that inside of your ad strategy, you have specific campaigns that are geared towards ranking. I still like auto campaigns. I still like low bid broad match campaigns. I still like phrase match campaigns. I still like brand defensive strategies. Product targeting, actually, if used correctly, can impact ranking. Like there's a whole host of additional ads that have validity in running. There are some thoughts out there like, oh, ranking is the only thing that Amazon ads are good for. That is not true. You want balance in your account. However, you want to make sure that you have designated campaigns that are primarily, the goal is for ranking on specific search pages. So to run those, I highly recommend single keyword exact match campaigns. And you want to make sure that you have strong enough conversion rates, evaluating search query performance report, identifying where your conversion rates and click-through rates are stronger than competitors, or at the very least on averages, is a fantastic way to pick ranking keywords. And then from there, I would want, again, you just want to make sure that the volumes, because the thing is that on ranking campaigns, most times your ACoS doesn't look great. It's not great. But you can still afford that if you're running a broader strategy where you have other low-cost strategies in conjunction with that. So you want to have a balance of both in the account. What I have seen over the years is that if all you focus in on is ranking, most times the ACoS is crazy high. Your cost per clicks continuously increase over time, which they just kind of naturally do. But they increase at a really fast pace. It can become unsustainable. And then oftentimes you are missing out on profitable traffic. Roughly a third of shopping happens on product pages. If you are not running product page placements, if you're not doing product targeting, if you don't have autos that are showing up on product targeting, you're actually missing out on a ton of potential traffic and sales. So there is validity. There's like this whole weird thing when it comes to placements, or everybody's like product pages are underperforming. Like that, you definitely want to keep on top of that, but like product page placements can be super valuable, which again, I don't mean to plug the launch doc again, but I do have a video going over a strategy we use on ASIN targeting that is really fantastic. It talks about leveraging product targeting to let me see. Yeah, there's a way to leverage product targeting to help with your ranking efforts. So again, I would want to run out all of the above strategy, but then you want to hone in on specific searches that you're pushing on for ranking. Difference in using search term reports and search query performance. I like when's best time to use them. Yeah, so you definitely want to use both. I wouldn't, to me, it's not an either or, it's both. So your search term reports, I would use those. It's like the best keyword research strategy out there. So I would definitely want to use search term reports. Those we use the most. I believe we're downloading those and analyzing them weekly, if not more frequently. For search query performance reports, I really like that to identify new potential search terms that I haven't launched. Search query performance will tell you what the Amazon ad algorithm thinks of your product as well, which is insanely helpful. And there you can actually look at how your conversion rate and your click-through rate compare to the averages on a specific search. So it's insanely helpful. You will have to calculate the conversion rate and the click-through rate yourself, but it's simply like it's impressions divided by clicks is click-through rate, and then it's called purchases, not orders, in search query performance. So purchases divided by clicks. You want to do that for the totals. So just see like the averages, and then you want to do it for like where it says like brand. You do it for your brand, and then you just compare those two. That can help you identify. So if you're struggling to rank on a keyword, or you just haven't really seen some momentum, I would check that, because it says like, hey, am I converting better than category, or am I well under my category for conversions? And then that can tell you like, oh, maybe there's some optimizations that I need to do. So again, I would definitely use both. Another really underutilized tool for research is Product Opportunity Explorer. If you haven't ever navigated that, I would just go give it a peek. It's really, really valuable and can be helpful to, again, understand the search market in your space. But I would say check search term reports more frequently, and then do search query performance. Check it regularly, periodically, monthly, bi-weekly, something like that. We now use a tool that actually allows us to pull it up for specific products, so it's pretty easy for us to track it and gives us graphs and things over time, which can be very helpful. That tool, there's a ton more to it, but it's called KPOQ, KAPOQ, which has been very helpful. Is using bulk sheets better than checking one by one Amazon Central? We still use Ad Console. So we have our own internal tool stack. We have, again, KPOQ. We've been using them for over 2 years now. Really like them for analytics. But with all of our wealth of analytics, we still check Ad Console because there's some distinct advantages. So if our example is you cannot get lifetime data anywhere else other than Ad Console. So that's a huge advantage, right? And there's certain things just navigating Ad Console. If you ever are using a tool and you never check Ad Console, like Amazon is notoriously horrible at releasing like updates to new options and things. Like, for example, someone earlier in the thread had mentioned something about off Amazon placements, and like that now there's a feature where you can uncheck to say like, hey, I don't ever want to show off Amazon. That optimization feature, the only place that it showed up was inside of Ad Console. There was no briefs about it. There was no releases. There was no status updates. It just like appeared one day in Ad Console. And to be honest, that's basically kind of how Amazon rolls out their updates, is like a new beta feature happens and then it just like, oh, update. Like we actually have an entire internal thread where the whole thing is just like us spotting those updates. And then like that's something we share monthly with clients. It's like, hey, here's all the updates that happened this month. But like if you're not inside Ad Console, you will miss so many things that are new and cutting edge. So I'm a huge advocate for staying very, very close to like the system as close as you can, which is going to be through Ad Console. That being said, there is a strategic advantage to bulk files if you're not using software or automations for optimizations. I would highly recommend bulk files over Ad Console because the scalability of that option to analyze and then also go ahead and make changes is like huge, really, really big. And so for that reason, I'm really bullish on bulk files. I talk a lot about bulk files, not so much these days, but you can basically build your own tool using bulk files, which is huge, and which is what we did in the beginning. So highly recommend it. But I would say that definitely still stay in touch with Ad Console. Yeah, awesome. So learning through self-study is a fantastic way to get started. I would say I've said this more than once, but I'll say it again. If you are trying to get really good at the craft of Amazon advertising, the best thing you can possibly do is to learn to read the data through the lens of consumer behavior. So Amazon advertising doesn't have as much creatives attached to it, meaning like in other ad platforms. So like even with Google pay-per-click, there's a lot of, creatives involved in that, and you write headlines a lot. It's a lot of like copy and things. Where meta ads, obviously there's a lot of creatives present in that ad type. However, with Amazon advertising, it's very like with sponsored ads, the creative is the listing. And so you want to make sure that I would highly recommend, it can feel very one-dimensional by click-through rate and conversion rate and impressions. And there's all these things you're like, oh, it's cold, hard data. But on the other end of the cold, hard data is the consumer behavior. So if you can learn to be like, oh, click-through rate, that means, okay, so what is the shopper seeing when they see my ads? They see where it shows up. They see my main image. They see my reviews. Okay, so when it appears on this search page, if you're thinking about it through the lens of consumer behavior, then you're going to end up being able to tell this, understand the story that the data is telling you, which will lead you to better troubleshooting and easier troubleshooting. And with that, I do have to bounce because I'm going to be on another live in 2 minutes. So I'm definitely going to end it here, but this has been amazing. I really appreciate it. I'm going to be here same time, same place next week. So make sure to come next week with your Amazon advertising questions, and I'll catch you in the next one. Thanks so much, guys. Appreciate it. And that wraps up this episode of the Ask Junglr Amazon Advertising Podcast. I hope you found these insights and strategies helpful in your Amazon PPC journey. Remember, if you have a burning Amazon ad question that you'd like answers to, head over to junglr.com/live to join our next live Q&A session. Until next time, keep optimizing those ads and stay hungry.